Welcome to the Creator Podcast. Today is an interesting day as we're continuing to grow as our business and a family, and I want to share kind of the things I'm going through right now, and share some personal stories to help you understand this mindset, this growth. Like we talked about on another episode, there's a new devil to every new level, and I remember when I first started as an entrepreneur. I came home, my wife was crying. She had had enough with real estate. Like, we have a baby and she's trying to show houses, and quite frankly, she was crushing it. She had at the time like $50,000 in pending transactions. She was just crushing it, and I looked at her and just was like, my gosh, like $50,000 is what I make in 6 months, 8 months, and I got to change. And so I remember next day I came home. I came home early. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I quit." I made it happen. And that's what started our new journey. But you see, what was so interesting about this whole journey is my wife and I never really talked about it. Like, I just came home, I did it. She kind of had an idea. She didn't know if I was serious or not. And I came home and just started working. And that shifted our family dynamic dramatically. And it was interesting looking at, the feedback here. All of a sudden I'm home. It's nice. We can go to the gym at, 10 in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning. We can sleep in. It just changed the whole dynamic. It threw her off. It threw me off. And our little baby at the time, it threw the baby off. And that's what I want to talk about today is business throws people off as you continue to grow. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't mean that like, oh man, I got thrown off my groove, I'm not doing well. No, what I mean is like it throws you out of your normal, your routine, your structure. And it has such a direct correlation to your family life. Whether you're working a job or whether you're an entrepreneur, whatever growth you experience is going to have a new devil in essence, like we talked about. And that may be that, you get a raise, promotion, you make more money. That's great. Maybe your hours increase too, or your responsibilities at work. And what I want to talk about is something that my wife and I are going through right now, which is it is extremely important if you are a married man or woman and you are trying to balance life and work and family is really, really important to you. If you're listening to this show, your family means a lot to you. It just does. Like, that's the key, the core. I just know that because that's who you are. And so if that's the case, it becomes even more appropriate then to discuss the changes and the things you're trying to do. And that's what my wife and I are dealing with right now. And the feedback is unreal because as we're trying new things and we're implementing new processes, those processes take time. And those processes may take away from other aspects, or maybe longer hours, or it may actually challenge your inner belief system. An example, Ambry, my wife, has been working on this amazing business idea. And she's been doing this since January of 2023. So not too far along the way, but she's been working on this idea. And it's interesting because as she continues to progress, it's taking more of her time, more of her thoughts, and some of the other things that she's doing, she's not neglecting, but she is over there focusing on other aspects too of this business. And therefore, it's creating a little bit of friction, which is good friction, right? This is good feedback. This is what we want. And so she comes and says, I need to, set up this appointment for 12:30s on Mondays. Cool. Awesome. So without really thinking about that and digging deep into it, 12:30 on Monday comes along and I find myself with the kids. Meanwhile, I have a 12:30 appointment too. And it conflicts. So now who's watching the kids? It's an interesting feedback here. And you could argue, well, whose business is more important? What's more important right now? You could argue that, but that's not the right way, in my opinion. And the right way to handle this is to say, how do we balance this? How do we actually work together to get the outcomes that we both want? More importantly, I think I think the thing that we don't really consider is how far deep are we getting into this commitment? You see, an example. Let's say you are wanting to do something new. Maybe it's like a friend night every Thursday night. We'll just shoot from the hip here. And you want to do this friend night every Thursday night. So you plan it the first time. It's amazing. You have this fantastic experience. And so you want to do it again. So the next Thursday, all of a sudden you're doing it again. And then the following Thursday, that's when you start to get the feedback. Hey, is this an every Thursday night? We had this planned a long time ago. Have you considered like how much time you're hanging out with friends? Like there's various different ways feedback could happen, right? Maybe your kids don't like you going. Maybe you're changing. There's so many different ways. So then you start to get this feedback that comes in and it's like, well, crap. Do I give up on this? I really like this. But then also there's this other feedback at home. Maybe it's like, well, do I scale back? But deep down, you have this wedge now that you've created. This wedge of, this is something I like doing and what I want to do. Meanwhile, there's the wedge of, okay, this is throwing out my family dynamic. So whose fault is that? I think ultimately we have to look in the mirror. I look at it and say, it's my fault. If I do something in business or I make a decision of something new I want to do and it throws our family dynamic, it's my fault for not communicating that. It's my fault for not exploring how deep that actually goes. Therefore, it is extremely important with your spouse, with your loved ones in business. It's important to really understand before you just start something. I think naturally we just start because it's exciting, it's a fun idea, but then we don't really realize what that commitment's going to do in our schedule and our life. And that's something that Ambry and I are going through right now. Is there are things that we've started and we're greeted with new feedback, things we've never considered before. And then we find ourselves frustrated and sometimes feeling a little uncomfortable because this new feedback we know to get to that next level is going to require us to change in ways that we didn't know we were prepared to change at that time. And so all of these emotions, all these feelings, they start to surface and it's easy to get frustrated. It's easy to quit. But ultimately, it's because there was no plan in the beginning. There was no talking through it, really making that mutual decision saying, yes, this is what we're going to do for our family. Was this what we're going to do for our business? There was none of that. It was just kind of all right, let's just start implementing. Oh my gosh, we struck gold. This works. Okay, let's do this. And before we know it, now we're greeted with all the feedback of the things that we didn't know we were prepared for. An example, I didn't know I was prepared to help certain people and listen to certain emotions and things at a deeper level. I didn't know that. And so I start receiving this feedback from some of the clients that I work with. And that feedback is very, very deep, very personal. And although I'm appreciative of the opportunity, I also was not prepared for some of the things in my past trauma to surface. Therefore, it required me to really consider to go back and to push my limits and my thoughts on that in order to get over that obstacle. Sometimes it pushes your spouse's feedback loop. Maybe there's something they are uncomfortable with you doing in your business. And it's not because you're doing anything illegally, but maybe it's just because there's an area for growth for the spouse. So then what? Do you continue to drive home and divide that wedge and blame your spouse for your lack of growth? or do you sit down and talk about it and make a plan? See, one of my mentors asked me a question one time, and I'm going to ask it to you today. Are you going on the map, or are you going on the map? Now, some of you be like, what a weird question, Jesse. Like, what is that? You may ask yourself, like, what the heck does that even mean? I want you to consider, are we just pointing to the map and going? Or are we actually utilizing the map to plan out how we're going to get there in an efficient way? You see, on a map, there's 6, 7 different ways to get to the same location, right? So it'd be easy just to point and look. Or are you utilizing the map and saying, this is the easiest way, and here's the stops we're going to make along the way? And oh my gosh, you know what? We probably need to use a restroom or a pit stop. Maybe someone needs a drink. Here's where we're going to stop. And the plan goes easy and smoothly. Here's what we're going to do on this road trip with our kids. You see, there's all these micro plans within this big plan. And so the question really comes down to, are you going there on the map? Are you just going because that's where the map's taking you? Or are you literally going there on the map and you know what obstacles and things you're going to face? So I'm going to invite you today to consider that question. Where in your life are you just going on the map? Where in your life are there areas where, oh, you know what? We went on this map and now all of a sudden we have to stop and there's no place in sight to stop. So then you make do with what you have under the circumstances, and maybe you have to use the restroom, so you find yourself sitting on the side of the road peeing, or maybe you're in a cup, or maybe you're stuck in traffic peeing in a Gatorade bottle. Maybe because you didn't plan it out right, you just went. Where are you doing that in your business? Where are you doing that in your life? Maybe your relationship. You see, I was greeted with that feedback last night where we started something, we had an idea, but now the feedback has started to come to my wife and I, and it's pushing her and it's pushing me to grow in areas that are extremely unique and new. Now, we welcome that growth because that growth means that there's going to be growth on the other side of finances and in business and in our self-development. But it's literally pushing us to the next level, and it feels uncomfortable. I want you to consider that. The question is, are you going on the map just to get there, or are you literally going on the map and you're maximizing everything that you're going through? Every journey, you know where you're stopping, you know what you're doing. And quite frankly, yes, there will be expectations, or there's some things that don't go as expected, or maybe there's something that comes up along the way that maybe throws you off just a little bit. But is it easier to tweak the already established plan slightly to accommodate that? Or is it easier just to continue to go with the flow? I ask you that question. I'm not going to tell you what is right or wrong, but what I will tell you is that as you plan your journey further, deeper into detail, not just a 1 year or 2 year, but actually look at it from a larger scope, maybe a 10-year plan of where you're taking your business, taking your life. And as you start to plan out those micro details of what you're going to do along the way, maybe, just maybe, you'll find that it's easier for you to accomplish the things you want. Thanks for listening to today's show. I hope that this really resonates with you, as this is something that we all go through. I'm going through it right now. And it is with the help of my amazing wife and mentors and people helping me along the way that's helping me overcome this emotional feedback that we're receiving. It takes humility. It takes discipline. And sometimes it takes a little nudge from a loved one or a spouse to help you get over that level and into a new area of thinking. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. The biggest favor I could ask is that you share this with your friends or leave an honest review. That way we can help find other entrepreneurs, business owners, spouses. We can help find a community together where we can have impact. You are a creator, and it is up to you to create the world that you want to live in. I hope you have a wonderful day.